Hi, I'm Ron.
And I'm tired. We've been doing this for a long time.
Oh, that's right. This is our anniversary show. Thanks for joining us for the Ron and Don anniversary show. Come on, Don, spark some energy.
We started right off with our second episode with making a pest of ourselves, I guess. And it was number 2. It was pest remediation. And then we hit some topics. We just kept hitting them over and over.
Recall that. That was capital versus R&M. And that was probably the most frequently talked about episode, which surfaced again and again in several episodes to follow episode 4.
They put it on the books and it has a book value of $7,000. Each month they knocked down was
1/12 of $1,000.
Well, yeah, 1/12 of $1,000, which was about, my math has gone out of my head.
It's smoke coming from your ears.
That would come off each month. So at the end of 1 year, the remaining book value of that particular piece of equipment is now $6,000. Making a friend at corporate came in at episode 6, which kind of tied into all that R&M stuff. Very well identified by a speech that was once given by Phil Hickey at the RIFMA organization. And he identified it very well. He used the term, make a friend in finance. And that was really an excellent advice. Those folks are very specific about the rules that they have to follow with the Sarbanes-Oxley and all kinds of governmental restrictions put on them. So they can be a little bit tough to help you keep your friends in operations. But if you make a friend in finance and you can get them to hear the problems that you're going through and how this particular item should be either capitalized, how long it should be capitalized for, or if it's a repair, how you can mitigate that to have less of a detrimental effect on the P&L and the bonuses of the people that it's going to affect in operations and throughout the organization.
Well, and I would say too, from the contractor's perspective, even the way you submit a proposal for improvements, the language you use affects how finance does their job.
Absolutely.
So it's important for the contractor as well to have at least a working relationship within the finance department to understand that words like repair versus replace have two completely different effects.
An episode on travel tips was quickly followed, as I recall, with a repair versus replace episode, which did an exploration of the cost analysis of both. And then I recall a topic on career derailers. And that one, as I recall, started out with a goofy start.
Today our topic is career derailers. And what are you wearing?
Heck, I'm retired. I can go to the beach anytime I want. I fortunately outlived my usefulness, and you know how that works.
Goodness gracious. Don, would you go get yourself cleaned up?
Then it was more work about how we could roll up our sleeves, oh golly, and help out to get the restaurant ready to open. And we went into our seasonal stuff, getting ready for fall.
Shortly thereafter, our good friend Phil Walton, CRFP, stopped by to give us kind of a real-world view of the life and times of a facility manager.
I'm Ron.
I'm Don.
And I'm Phil.
This is the Ron and Don Show. Thanks for joining us today.
You know, it was really good to see old Phil Walton again. And we went right into hazards of CO2, more work, and all the regulations involved. If you have 1% of the air or 10,000 parts per million, you are potentially in a very hazardous situation. CO2 displaces the oxygen in the atmosphere, so you can literally suffocate from a leak or from that displacement. In fact, I've had an employee that was in a couple of restaurants that were affected by it. One of them went into a walk-in cooler that had leaking valves in the cooler for the beer system, and they took a deep breath and a few seconds later keeled over. Fortunately, their feet propped open the door and they were dragged out and sent off to the hospital and ended up fine. If the door hadn't been propped open just a little bit, if they hadn't been in the right position, they could have easily died in there in a matter of minutes.
That's a pretty scary story, Don, and in fact it's stories like that that have prompted more than 23 states at last count to enact regulations for the safe storage and use of CO2 within restaurants.
Well, if you're tired, you should think back to the work that went into developing the three-part series for floor tile repairs and epoxy regrouts that we created for Laticrete. That was a lot of work, but that was also the best, most frequent feedback we got from any show we've created in the last year.
That was a good one, I agree. We had to get ready for the holidays with episode 25, and then we talked about extreme cold all over the country, and then we talked about structural problems all over the country with roof structure in episode 28 and 29. Make sure you do surveys of the roof more intensively than you have in the past. In the last few years of my career, I thought, all the buildings I knew that were overbuilt in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, but then I got to thinking back. We started having buildings that had less structural integrity as a result of alloys being needed for the Vietnam War. Tectum decks came in, which were a great idea that failed, and then finally we had the value engineering come in where we're reducing the costs. Your roofs are now much more dangerous with the environment changing. We may have more snow, more heavy rains. You need to be ahead of the game.
Remember rumors, innuendos, and lies, all true, where we talked about how the truth can be lost in communication?
That was.
We got a lot of good feedback on that one, too.
That was okay, yeah. Now, it's not politically a smart move to call a manager a liar. Won't go well in your career. But you need to find out the facts, and then at some point in time, once you've unraveled it, with tact and diplomacy, which I never really had a lot of, and I use self-deprecating stories to give them the impression that we all make mistakes and don't recognize things properly. And that with training and with effort, we can improve the communications between us and get the facts right from the beginning and be able to get through it.
I also recall custom stainless steel fabrication being a three-part series we filmed in Orlando with Florida Stainless Fabricators. Got some great feedback on that one as well.
I still remember the noise.
Yeah, my ears are still ringing from the noise in that factory.
Then it was Build a Better Punch List. Well, it was actually just Build a Punch List was the name of the episode, but we were talking about a better punch list in 35, and 36 and 37 respectively were rotten walls. What we got to do about those? We never get away from those things.
Rotten walls.
And then there's POS systems we have to take out and put back in. That was 37.
Well, I'm going to go back to rotten walls and think back to bringing Bill Riley in to give us the layman's explanation of mold, the M word.
What is mold, and why should we be concerned about it?
Mold is it's a naturally occurring thing everywhere we go, inside, outside, in buildings, walls, all around us, inside the building, outside the building. And sometimes it's so small you can't see it, and it's there whether we like it or not. It's always going to be around us, and it impacts some people in different ways. It impacts our building materials in different ways, and it can be something that we really need to pay close attention to in our buildings and our everyday work life.
So you can't just wipe that with bleach then?
You can, but it'll be back 10 times worse next week or next month, and it'll be something more difficult to deal with. The proper way to deal with it is to, when in doubt, cut it out. As you guys could probably see that's about the size of a quarter. When we talk about mold spores, that's the really bad stuff of mold, 1 billion mold spores in something about that size. That's about the size of a quarter, 1 billion mold spores. That's a B. Okay, so don't think you can send your new handyman that just walked in, you're paying him $10 an hour, $5 an hour in to clean that up and not destroy the rest of your building at some point in time. Don't do it. It's a big mistake. Any little visible mold you see, take precautions. Use the right techniques to clean it up. If you don't know how to do it, ask somebody that does. Take care of your building. They're expensive.
I really learned a lot in that episode. As a matter of fact, I think he even mentioned something like, I didn't know Jack. And I didn't. But I did know Jill. Then we had a sponsored program with SLM, actually 2 of them. First one was 39, I think it was. That was on waste grease, and then I think number 40 was on grease traps. And we had a really good series with Denko as well, which was 41 and what was the other one? 47, I think. And that was getting landscaping ready for spring and also getting landscaping ready for summer, which are 2 separate things.
You want to make sure that you're replacing, if you're going to do a plant replacement, you're replacing with the right plant in the right place. So that means making sure it matches up with the hardiness zone and making sure you plan for that plant to grow. You don't want to put them on top of each other. So when you're getting your beds ready and you're thinking about doing replacements, make sure you've got a vendor that is putting the right plant in the right place.
Hey, do you remember Capital by the Numbers? Standing up and building that chart. That was good, though. We got a lot of great feedback on that one because it was kind of a practical application of how you evaluate whether to repair versus replace. And the truth's in the numbers.
And what was good about that is that it gave them a tool. It gave everybody a tool that they could use, just a simple chart to evaluate it by the numbers. And we went on to doing some shifting paradigms when redirecting focus, which kind of was to help understand how to get operations off of a point that they're stuck on so you can move on to the actual fixing of the problems. And then we had non-negotiables, and then we had a response to non-negotiables where we did non-negotiables.
That wasn't just Don stuttering. We really did an episode on non-negotiables that was a follow-up to the first show, which was non-negotiables.
I'm confused. But I'm not tired
But
anymore.
you're not tired anymore. I'm Ron.
And we had a lot of fun, and I'm no longer tired.
This is the Ron and Don Show. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you watching us all the way through the season. And please send us your comments, and don't forget, please subscribe.